The Age of Fire had endured for what must have seemed like an eternity. Beneath Gwyn's rule, Anor Londo stood as the greatest city the world had ever known. The gods governed from their radiant kingdom above the clouds, and civilization flourished under the light of the first flame. To those living during this age, it may have appeared that the triumph over the dragons had secured a future without end. But no fire burns forever. Deep within the kiln of the first flame, the source of Gwyn's power slowly began to weaken. Unlike an ordinary flame that fades within hours, the first flame diminished over countless ages, almost imperceptibly. Yet the signs became impossible to ignore. The brilliant light that had once transformed the world was beginning to lose its strength. To most, this would simply have marked the natural progression of the universe. After all, the first flame had introduced disparity into existence. Light and dark, life and death, creation and decay. If it had a beginning, it was only natural that it would one day have an end. But for Gwyn, this was not merely the fading of a fire. It was the end of his entire world. The Age of Fire was more than an era of history. It was the foundation of the gods' power, the source of their authority, and the reason Anor Londo stood above every kingdom below. As long as the flame endured, Gwyn remained Lord of Sunlight. If it disappeared, so too would the age he had spent countless years building. Yet the fading flame carried an even greater implication. As fire weakened, darkness naturally grew stronger. This was not an invasion, nor was it the work of some hidden enemy. Darkness was simply the other half of the balance created when the first flame first appeared beneath the arch trees. Just as night follows day, the decline of fire would inevitably give rise to an age of dark. To many scholars of Dark Souls, this is one of the greatest misunderstandings in the entire series. The Age of Dark was never presented as an apocalypse. Rather, it was the next chapter in the natural cycle of the world. Just as the Age of Ancients gave way to fire, the Age of Fire was always destined to give way to darkness. And at the center of that coming age stood humanity. Long before the flame began to fade, the furtive pygmy had divided the dark soul into countless fragments. Those fragments became humanity itself, carried within every human who would ever live. While the gods drew their strength from the Lord's souls, mankind unknowingly carried within them the very power that would inherit the world once fire finally disappeared. Whatever his reasons, Gwyn made a decision that would shape every event in the Dark Souls trilogy. He chose to resist the natural order. While Gwyn searched for a way to preserve the fading flame, another of the original lords pursued an even more desperate solution. The Witch of Izalith. As one who had mastered fire since the birth of the Age of Fire, Izalith believed she might recreate the first flame itself. If the original source of fire was dying, perhaps a new one could simply be born. It was an act born not from malice, but from hope. Yet the first flame was never an ordinary fire. It could not simply be copied. The experiment failed catastrophically. Instead of creating a new first flame, the witch gave birth to something entirely different. The flame of chaos. Unlike the first flame, chaos was wild, unstable, and impossible to control. It consumed everything around it, twisting life into monstrous new forms. The witch herself became the bed of chaos, a grotesque being that had lost all resemblance to the lord she once was. Her daughters were transformed alongside her, and the once great city of Izalith disappeared beneath a kingdom of molten ruin, inhabited by creatures the world had never seen before. Thus the demons were born. This catastrophe marked the first great collapse of the Age of Fire. One of the lords who had helped build the new world had instead created a force that neither gods nor men could fully contain. Lost Izalith became a monument to the danger of defying the natural order, a place where even good intentions had produced unimaginable suffering. For Gwyn, the failure of Izalith proved one terrible truth. The first flame could not be replaced. If the Age of Fire was to survive, another solution would have to be found. As the light continued to fade and darkness crept ever closer, Gwyn reached a decision that no ruler before or after him would ever fully escape. He would journey to the kiln of the first flame, and there he would attempt the impossible. Not to create a new age, but to prevent the old one from ever ending.